In Taoism, is it true that the source or the record of truth is in nature? Is nature what we refer to when we're looking for truth?
It's one of them, but nature is considered to be a manifestation of the Tao. And so it's limited because the range of experience is limited, but a great deal can come from it, primarily because we're a product of nature. So for a human, nature's kind of the first, for lack of a better word, let's say testing ground. And so it's the place where you need to go to make most of your initial gains. And it's a place that is your ally because we're a manifestation of it. So it provides important elements from that. Theoretically, you have the natural pathways of enlightenment, which was more likely, let's say, back in the early periods like the Zhou Empire and such. So the times for those pathways to be successful have probably long since passed.
Oh.
But
so you're saying, like, if I have an assumption, I can see if it works naturally or in nature. So nature becomes an ally in my search for truth.
Well, Taoism is empirical and is based around the same premises of you can form anything you want in your head, but if you can't actually do it or find proof for it, at the very least it's going to be a suspect, and more than likely the response from another fully trained Taoist will be essentially, well, show me.
Show me.
If you can't show me, you can't reproduce it, then your words could be anything. And that's one of the things we have to keep in mind, is that the differentiation between illusion and truth is that illusion is infinite, whereas truth is not. Truth is very broad, but it can't just be anything. So, because there is a particular reality, it is manifested in a certain way.
Yeah.
It has its rules and its tendencies, whereas illusion can be anything. You can just make it up as you go.
Yes.
And say anything you want, do anything you want, create situations where it's impossible to counteract it. That would be one of the reasons that that nature is a source of truth. That, and no matter what you do, let's say one of the absolute checks from nature right now is death.
Right.
And
oh,
so
yeah. That's never changed.
Right. You can form any illusion you want, but you have death as your ultimate check. Now, Taoists have dealt with that in many different ways, including the immortality pathway, but which just basically says the rule for death is highly likely, but not absolute. And anybody who's worked within that particular branch knows that that's how it's talked about. Of course, you're going to have the outside representations of it, which is the desire to cast it as being ludicrous. But once you understand the premises and the principles behind it, and the fact that the activity within that discipline is actually never stopped, you start to realize that, oh, it is highly unlikely, but possible.
Yeah,
So.
and it's worthy of putting some effort toward, just general health and avoiding calamity as much as you can. So when we walk outside and we're in nature, is it fair to say that the consistency of nature can give us, or to observe nature can give us a guide to or toward reality, toward truth?
Well, yeah, basic reality. Anytime you're inputting nature as opposed to ideology, you're going to advance, at least in some regard. And Because you have, in one instance, with the ideology, you have a thing unbound by reality. So
the illusion.
right. And then you have the thing as you're directly experiencing it. In this case, that would be nature. And it's a system that we have built-in inputs for. We're designed to respond to it. And those systems of dealing with reality are activated and built up in strength by doing those things. However, it's obviously also not the preeminent pathway for achieving great development or truth, because otherwise everybody who lived in nature, which for most of humanity's history was pretty much everybody.
Yes. Okay.
Everybody would be running around with personal liberation or accumulated ling or any one of those things, and that's not what happens.
So maybe particularly for the modern human, it would be advantageous to get out into nature or become comfortable or observe carefully nature more than they normally do.
Well, yes. The part of what we have now is that mostly worldwide is that we have an illusion begetting an illusion, which oftentimes begets an illusion. So, as you know, I spend a large amount of time on internet and social design, and have no doubt that that is an illusion, being beget by an illusion. And so as society manifests a particular expression of a thing, there are small threads of truth through everything, but they're very small. And if you have that, then you have the response to the media. That response is illusionary as well. So
you mean the viewer has a response to what you're... Okay.
And so you would have essentially society, media, and response, which would be 3 layers of illusion. And then you get into self-reinforcing cycles as those things work. And that's the reason that social media is both persuasive and dangerous at the same time. And it's because that cycle can be turned towards any particular thing, whether that is good or bad, is really just how the cycle happens to spin and how much reality is present within it.
Yeah. So. All right. So taking a break from that is bound to be good, right?
Yeah. Especially if you're going all the way back to naturalness. In that circumstance, you're trying to create a connection to your, for lack of a better term, genetic self. So whatever your potential or your capabilities are.
Yeah.
And social media is not a good way of discovering that. It can be a good way of discovering your subcommunity, which is very helpful, I would say, for people.
Yeah, your support system.
Well, you can sit back and go, there are other people that are like me that have achieved this particular thing. And if you're in the position where you've had that when you were younger, where you were fortunate enough to stumble across your group of people within a community, then that doesn't seem like that big of an issue. But if you didn't have that when you were younger, then it is actually a huge issue, because essentially the definition becomes there is nobody else doing what I'm doing or like me, which is actually very difficult for a human.
That's right. And I'm all alone. I'm isolated.
Right. And I would say probably the greatest benefit of social media has been that it's allowed people to find clusters of similarity, even if they're in a fractional percentile of the population. And so by that, let's say you're sub 1%. Now, in a pre-internet time, if you're sub 1% of a population, your best solution was probably to move to a larger population area. Let's say one of the big cities.
Yeah.
You know, we have Phoenix, which I believe is what, number 5 in the U.S. now, or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
For a population size.
But you'd have to live there and go find a club or something.
Well, you would, let's say you're part of a 1% of whatever within the population. 1% of millions of people is still a large number of people.
Right.
If you're a percentile of a percentile, it's still a lot of people. And so your odds are much better if you're shifting to a city. Post-internet, you can just look for people that overlap. So now there are difficulties with that, and we see many of those difficulties in that those subcommunities can very easily form echo chambers where all you hear is from that one group of people.
Yes.
And so then you have, again, the spinning of an illusion cycle that is occurring then with very little input from reality. And that's dangerous no matter who you are. And that's one of the, with humans, you are likely to get more disagreement and more encounter with reality than you are online. And so with online, you have this, an artifice that's immediately bound into it.
Yeah, like a protection, like an armor.
Right. And I think ultimately, like for social media, we're at a very primitive stage for it right now. And I'm not referring just to the technology, I'm referring to the use of it. And it's like first stage or early stages of anything, it's fraught with certain numbers of problems. It causes issues that nobody really wants. But I think there's a core within it that will become useful, that provides benefits. Now, the question of history will be, was it worthwhile?
Yeah.
And that's not always a yes. So,
in a sense, it's a separate nature, right? Because it's evolving and developing on its own. I mean, obviously with our influence. But if we observe the social media and the internet as a natural organism, we can learn from it too.
well, and you know, if I were to try to sum up or wrap or condense what you're saying, and this may or may not be a good approximation, essentially, we are earlier talking about having nature as an input into the system, and now we're talking about the fact that social media can also be the input into the system.
Yeah.
And it was designed to do that in a compelling fashion. There's no doubt about that. And the risks I see in that, first, I think that that's true. And that's just my opinion. There isn't a formal Taoist position on social media, or even in the Four Ascendant where things move faster. The risk with nature, the risk is minimal simply because it's nature. We have a very long association with nature. Mm-hmm. And we're designed to respond to it. We have built-in triggers that deal with nature. Like, so as you get older, think of how many conversations you have about the weather. That's always a good fallback, isn't it? So you can always have a weather conversation. And the reason is that it's tolerated. Because if you take a step back from it, it's actually pretty tedious and formulaic. However, it's tolerated because we have a built-in hook for it. It's like, what did you hear about the weather? Well, I heard it was going to be like blah, blah, blah.
It's coded in. It's important to know or to have a feeling about the weather.
Yeah. And so we have a built-in hook for that. With social media, it's definitely a manipulation of hooks as they're discovered. But we don't have a long-term relationship with it. We don't have safeguards for it as a population. We don't have ways of dealing with it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the excesses of it have to do with the fact that, we have this thing that's new, that's become this major source of input. What is its impact going to be?
Yeah.
And the thing is, we're discovering that. There wasn't a carefully calibrated examination of what the impact would be, which ideally from the Taoist position should have been done. And so
that makes a lot of sense.
Well, you know, historically, Taoists will oftentimes contemplate a thing for several centuries before they decide, maybe.
Okay. We'll think about putting it out there.
We'll put it out there. Maybe they won't destroy themselves using it.
And in contrast to nature, there haven't been billions of years in simultaneous and harmonious development between elements of nature, so that, you know, it is what it is, and it's going to do what it does, and we are part of it.
Well, and also keep in mind, for most of human history, many tens of thousands of years, we were in the Stone Age. And our mental methodologies are from our Stone Age selves.
We can't advance fast enough inside. Is that what you're saying? Like our essence can't...
Well, I would say that what you're saying is true. However, that's not the real point that I was making.
Oh.
The point is that we have, for most of human history, built a certain type of life with a certain type of outcome.
Uh-huh.
And we are designed for that. As we start to move away from it, we're going to encounter complexities. As for technology and such, are these Stone Age humans, of which I include myself, really capable of dealing with technology? And the Taoist answer to that very early on was no. So,
That's pretty rough. I mean, what's the Taoist answer to that realization?
well, that has to come down with, okay, so I'm not sure how approachable I can make this topic, but it's fundamentally, as you've heard me say before, the principles of science are actually all Taoist principles, except Taoists started doing it thousands of years ago.
Right?
There are certain key differences, and so I'll make a technical reference for those of you that are familiar with the podcast and, let's say, the website and such. Science is about how the subject and the object is different and how to increase the space between the two.
Increase the space.
Increase the space.
Differentiate.
So, right. And so, like, if there's this water bottle here and I am experiencing it, I can do certain things to try to understand my experience of it. I can say it's, let me grab something else here. Yeah. It is roughly 20 pebbles high.
Okay, right.
It weighs 30 pebbles.
Okay, yeah, we can figure out its characteristics.
Right. It is slightly softer than a pebble, which I was not expecting. It is hollow.
It's hollow.
This is not hollow.
Right.
So I can characterize it by comparison.
Yes.
That's essentially the nature of science.
Yes, empiricism at its fundamental.
Right, and if you study how that emerged and such, it can be helpful if this is an area of interest for you. What this ultimately leads to is trying to create a bigger and bigger division between the human and the experience of the object by introducing measurement.
Yes.
And this ultimately leads to machines. And it leads to very complex, very sophisticated machines. Because with measurement, you can create complex mechanisms.
Yes, and you can repeat things.
Right. And with Taoism, it's not that Taoism was anti-measurement. In fact, I just did a podcast which talked about Taoism's ancient relationship with automatons, puppets, and robots. And it's also the Chinese relationship with it. So, like, the core conflicts of AI now have been discussed in Taoism for, again, thousands of years. But the big difference was sitting back and going, we can create this division between subject and object, but ultimately we can never separate ourselves. All we have is our experience of the object. And the only way to refine that is not with increasing distance, but to understand how the human experiences and processes the object.
That's right, because all those measurements are just codifications of our experience.
Right.
It's not really reflected or reflecting the actual water bottle. It's just how we experience it.
And the Taoist premise, different than the Western premise, is that the division is an illusion. You are always your experience of the water bottle, and it's part of who you are. And only by understanding that can we achieve a greater understanding of the water bottle. So how does it exist the same as I exist? How does the water bottle different than I am? And what are the essential components behind that? And so only through self-refinement can you achieve accuracy, because no matter what else you do, you may have an illusion of accuracy, but you're not really dealing with the human. And of course, to refine a human so that they can clearly perceive something means that they need to undergo a spiritual process of that type of internal refinement. So the Taoist approach has essentially been, you should really only have technology as you develop the capability of clearly perceiving it.
That's where we're not ready for it, because, and we're barely ready to use a water bottle.
Well, you know, what we have is a world of expansive rules of thumb of lower and lower accuracy, I would say. And with AI, what we're trying to do is to get something that can partly use it for us, because we don't really understand it.
So we put in all our rules of thumb into AI, and we ask it,
use this for me better.
use this approximation and flawed reasoning for me better. So back to the original question about nature. Now I can see a whole different way of looking at nature. There's two components to the experience of nature, which is me just being nature and me quantifying nature. Both have their rewards, but the common element is that nature is just going to be itself no matter what I do. And maybe realizing that is part of the value and the comfort that one finds in nature.
Okay.
Does that seem to make sense? I know it wasn't really a question, it was just sort of an observation from our discussion, because I'm seeing that with an analytical sort of brain, you might have, you would have a tendency to separate yourself from nature. But being a human, an animal, and a creature of nature, you have this, or I have this deep craving to be in a natural environment that doesn't have, that is basically uninfluenceable because it is so immense. And to me, it has the truth, and it bears the truth that I seek.
Okay. That sounds correct. I mean, we're built for the inputs. The real problem with using the social sphere, so within the Four Ascendant, the four spheres, the first sphere is the social world. The problem with using that as your source of knowledge is that when you have people that do that, and let's look at the actual people, what happens is that they commonly develop a large variety of behavioral issues, ranging from fearfulness to lack of resilience to manias where one thing is dramatically overemphasized over other elements.
Yeah.
And that comes from a construct of a world that can mean anything at any time. And now that may seem like a radical statement. Well, can it really mean anything at any time? And probably not every, 4 seconds, but certainly
I don't know. It's
the
approaching
pace of
that
dominant.
scale.
Yeah, the pace of dominant trends now is what a couple days here and a couple days there. And we've talked about you and I have talked about how the meaning of words have changed quite dramatically within very short periods of time. Like the meaning of a word, you're lucky if in 30 years the meaning significantly changed. But now you can walk out and the whole terminology will be focused on something else. So for Taoism, that's this concept of flow, and even the word alignment or other things like that didn't have anywhere near the position or commonality that it has now. The reason for that is flow used to be a very specific Taoist term, and now it's a social term. And they are radically different in their meanings. And it's largely, actually, I don't know why it happened.
It just happens. We just enjoy or indulge in stirring things up as a species.
Well, and it is the realm of illusion, so it's the social sphere which is most inclined towards illusion. And people enjoy the power of redoing an illusionary thing. It's an expression of their own will.
Yes.
And it's having a source of power is one of the sources of happiness. So even if the only thing you're changing is illusionary, it still provides that feedback of, oh, I possess the power to change or influence things, which makes us feel more powerful.
Especially if you are in that realm and feel that is a worthy realm.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I see social media as like the sandbox for crazy people. It's just a way of...
It can certainly be that, but the thing that I would always say is that, again, it's very early. It's very early in that emergence. To me, it's very interesting for that reason to watch a thing as it emerges, how it's chosen to be used, its manipulation by groups that possess resources or power, different things like that. It's very early in comparison to what it used to be, or compared to what it will be. So I don't want to talk from the future.
So, given that we are all exposed to that realm, I think that, I guess my original idea was that you can find solace in nature because it is consistent and it is not influenced by trend and by whim.
Well, yeah, and if you want to really go classical Taoist, so even within the Taoism of thousands of years ago, we have the practice known as Biguan, which is essentially, if we were translate it semi-cleverly to English, be gone. And so even if you take a person who's living in the hubbub of 2000 BC, strolling down through the streets, wondering how he can get out of the rat race or how she can get out of the rat race, and which is Lao Tzu's position, essentially. And it's like, I've just had it with this hustle and bustle of this world. Well, you can always be Guan, which is, as if you take his classic story, stuck his stuff on the back of a mule and just walked off into the woods and went about doing his stuff. But the reason for that is that the social mind, which is the incorrect approximation of the world, is strongest within dense social clusters like cities.
Yeah.
And that's why you have terms like the red dust. You have terms like social mind. And when you step into nature, you're at least stepping outside of the dust for a bit. And so you can get some clarity. And the other common way of referring to it is the poison of the world. So they're not flattering descriptions
No, not at all.
of when we have dense clusters. And the thought has always been as well, do humans actually have to be this way? So more than likely, humans have to live in a representation. It's something to do with the way our minds work. And but we don't have to live in an antagonistic representation, and we certainly don't have to live in one that's enslaving. So there's substantial difference between that world, the world of the dust, and stepping outside of it. So when you're discussing, well, going to nature in order to find solace, relief in some fashion, or clarity,
Yeah.
those are regarded as periods of removing the poison from the self, or of shaking off the dust, which only exposure to the natural world can do. And now, is there a better substitute for the natural world? There are substitutes for the natural world, which would effectively be enhancements of the natural world, but those are not really accessible to the common world. So
Maybe we'll discuss that later on. All right. Thank you.